So, Leonie Fiebich is one of, in my opinion, the most important players in the WNBA right now. And what do you mean by she's one of the most important players in the WNBA? What are you talking about? Do you want to know why she's so important? Because her archetype does not exist. Her archetype legitimately does not exist in the WNBA. And that is a fact. She is a tall, lengthy, 3-and-D, switchable 1 through 5 sniper. They don't exist. And I'm going to show you guys on every other team. When you have got, she is legit 6'4", quick hands, long arms, can guard 1 through 5, can switch 1 through 5, can guard A'ja Wilson. Can do everything. She can do absolutely everything. And let's just take a look at the teams in the W. She is the Lynx have something kind of similar to Lana Smith. But these players are being only coached overseas. The Connecticut Sun do not have any player like that. They have Dejanay Carrington, who is a lockdown defensive wing with super quick hands. The difference is between her and Dejanay is Dejanay's not. I know she's an improving shooter. She's still not much of a shooter, and she can't really guard bigs. And she also struggles on the super quick guards. She's not quite quick enough, but she doesn't have the length. She's the best Caitlin Clark defender, but she really struggled on Kelsey Mitchell. The Aces do not have that player. The Seattle Storm do not have the player because Gabby Williams is not a good enough shooter. The Fever obviously don't have that player. Maybe Lexi Hull, but Lexi Hull is not as good a defender or shooter as Leonie Fiebich. The Mercury don't have that player. Celeste Taylor can't shoot. The Dream don't have the player. The Mystics don't have the player. Engsler's not a good enough defender. The Sky obviously don't have the player. And the Wings don't, obviously, Satu's not a good enough defender, especially on the perimeter, and the Sparks don't have that player. The reality of it is that it is not an archetype that exists in the WNBA because it is not an archetype that is taught in American basketball. So the problem with the 3-and-D wing is that the WNBA is 20 years behind the NBA. So when we looked, let's just say 15 years ago, when we looked at the NBA, there were a lot of the great defenders couldn't really shoot. I'm just trying to think off the top of my head who's the perfect 3-and-D. The Kentavious Caldwell-Pope archetype was supremely not rated. And if you listen to the way Leonie Fiebich has spoken, she has said she thought she wasn't even going to make the WNBA because she didn't think her skill set was going to be valued. So they were like, oh, she doesn't, if you watch her play, she thought she was going to be cut because, her game doesn't pop. And that's the flaw of women's basketball. It's if you look overseas, you look at that French team, you've got the likes of, she's not Fiebich good right now, but coming up in your Layla Lacan. Is this 5'11", basically Gabby Williams light, 5'11", athletic, rangy guard who's doesn't really have a flaw in her game, who can shoot a bit, who can guard 1 through 3 probably, maybe 1 through 4, who's got quick hands, is athletic. If you look at Janelle Salone, Tijan Salone's sister, which is I think the Fever should really push her. Somebody needs to get her. She's playing in Italy. She's not going to be caught prioritization rules. Yes, she has to miss a chunk in the middle of the season to play in Eurobasket. Just, you don't play Saxton anyway. Get her on a cheap contract. Go and bring in Janelle Salone because she could be pushing for a starting spot. She can shoot the ball a little bit. Janelle Salone, I watched her play in Ireland. And when the French national team played the Irish national team. And she was super. She played EuroLeague last year, averaged 11.5 points a game. Obviously, she played for a team in France. She's playing Italy this year. And if you're looking at her 3-point percentage, 1 of 2, 3 of 6, 1 of 2, 3 of 4, 1 of 3. On the year, she shot 37% from 3. She played center for France in the Olympics. She is 23 years old, just turned 23 a month ago. So she's going to be 23 next season. She's younger than Paige Beckers, I'm pretty sure. Or she might be, if she's older than Paige Beckers, she's a few weeks older than Paige Beckers. She's younger than Hailey Van Lith. She's a year younger than Kate Martin. You can find players like these that are good defenders, athletes, 3-point shooters in Europe. That's where you have to go because they don't exist in college basketball. Because the problem is the archetype of WNBA players are your D and no 3, your 3 and no D, as in you've got your Jordan Horstons, and then on the opposite end, you've got your Kaylee Lou Samuelsons, who can't guard anybody, but will hit jump shots. And you've got players that'll lock down anyone, but can't hit jump shots. It's a problem with coaching, and it starts from a young age. It's the reason why we're seeing now, like a lot more 3-and-D players now in America, because 10 years ago when they were starting to come in, they were heavily undervalued. Now coaches value those players. And you're seeing how important a Mikal Bridges is going to cost you. Now, these are max contract players. The problem is the WNBA gives max contracts to bigs and scorers. That's it. Like, the WNBA is a league where there is value placed on Jewel Lloyd. And I don't mean that as a knock to Jewel Lloyd. Like, Jewel Lloyd made an Olympic team. Jewel Lloyd is an inefficient, ball-dominant shot chucker. She's like, I'm trying to think of that. She's like Lou Williams. Like, would have saw in the early 2000s, Lou Williams would have been a first option on a team. But the game of basketball changed. The game of basketball became about efficient forwards, pace of play, catch and shoot players that can defend, switchability. And that's literally what Leonie Fiebich is. Leonie Fiebich is, you can argue, the third best player on the Liberty. Any given game, she can be the third best player. They can't function without her on the floor. Because what she makes up a lot of the time for Sabrina Ionescu, because she can guard the other team's best player. Whether it be AJ Wilson or Kelsey Plum, she's going to give both of them equally as much trouble when the referees aren't trying to foul her out of the game. And she's elite. She's elite. And if I'm WNBA teams, I'm looking to Europe. There are players, you can get players that are unbelievable in college. And I'm not saying Europe is better in college, especially in women's. What I'm saying is, a European player, for example, a Leonie Fiebich. A Leonie Fiebich in America, with the way basketball is over there, would have been nothing. She would have been nothing. Because even though she's 6'4", I remember when she first came to WNBA, people were talking about it and they were like, well, she's 6'4", and they said it was a negative, that it was like 60% of her shots are three-pointers. She's not able to bang with people inside. She's a two-guard! Like, I'm sorry. It makes absolutely no difference. No difference here. But, like, it doesn't matter that she can't post up. She's a two-guard. The post-up is an inefficient offense. Like, the low post, dump it down, is not efficient offense. It slows the tempo down too much. You get less open shots. And, unless you have a one-on-one dominant post player, and they don't really exist in the league. They actually don't. Like, Aja Wilson prefers the midi and she prefers the drive to the left. Aaliyah Boston is probably the best post footwork player. But Aaliyah Boston, her team is better when she's facing up to the basket. And the reality is that this flawed understanding of basketball is how Leonie Fiebich gets tossed by the Chicago Sky. She gets tossed by the LA Sparks because they're not interested in her because, oh, you know what, like, she's not going to give us 15 points a game. And, oh, she kind of likes to shoot threes at the 4. I say, why? Because she's athletic enough to play the 2 and plays the 2, so it's a problem. Like, all the flaws that teams thought Leonie Fiebich had are actually her strengths. She doesn't have any flaws as a basketball player. And that's the biggest thing. Is she does not have a flaw as a player. And that is my biggest issue, with, especially in the women's side, with the way the coaching is, because it's so dominated by Gino Auriemma, Dawn Staley, who play a prehistoric, no offense to both of them, a prehistoric brand of basketball, and they're setting up a lot of their players to play a prehistoric brand of basketball in the WNBA, and it is the teams that don't play a prehistoric brand of basketball that are better. The Sun just dragged teams down to their level. They're different. But the Aces played prehistoric basketball this year. The Fever tried to do it. The Mercury, in fairness, the Mercury I thought played pretty okay basketball. The Sky played prehistoric basketball. The Sparks were tanking. But the Liberty and the Lynx, and in fairness to Cheryl Reeve, she adapted. Like, the ball movement is perfect. Like, they're super with that. But the fact that a player like Leonie Fiebich slipped through the cracks, she should have been in the league as soon as possible. Like, she would have been perfect. And instead of coming into a rookie deal right now, she should be ending her rookie deal right now and getting ready to sign a max contract. But instead, she was the 2-time Spanish League MVP, and teams still didn't look for her. There are literally WNBA All-Stars that were playing in the league, or WNBA stars. And she was their 2-time MVP in her early 20s, and teams didn't want her because, I don't know, they thought the fact that she's a 6'4" shooting guard who can guard anybody and shoot the lights out is a problem and doesn't do dumb shit on the floor, which is a big, big thing for WNBA players. She doesn't do dumb shit, which is so rare because most of them do dumb stuff nonstop. But anyway, yeah, that's the video.